So we're going to start Lab5, create a console application called league table. So let's kick this off. And our second instruction, create a class called team that has properties to hold team name, number of wins, draws, losses, number of games, and points. All of these properties are read-only. So the team name is set in the constructor that takes one parameter. Let's have a look at that. So a new class called team. Just going to underscore those private variables. We could just go ahead and declare them as public, but this is a good habit to get into. Good encapsulation practice. And points. So now we need some public accessors for our private properties. We could use the prop keyword to give us a template for these. So the first one is team name, that's a string. Tab again. Team name, and the getter and setter is there ready to go. And we could create the rest like that, but I want to show you a quicker way to generate public accessors for private properties. If we select all of our private properties, right click, quick actions, encapsulate fields. So this is a built-in function that Visual Studio gives us. And look, here are our public accessors ready to go. There's the first one, team name. It's got a getter and setter. The syntax a little bit different to what we've seen before, but the effect should be the same. Okay, so we have our public accessors for our private properties. Now, can we generate a constructor for the team class? So it's going to be public team, and this constructor is going to take in a string for team name. So let's specify that. A body for our constructor, and we want to wire this up so the private property team name is going to equal the parameter passed by the constructor. So that's team name, and there's our constructor. Again, there is a shortcut in Visual Studio to build a constructor for you. If you right click on the class name, class declaration there, you can see there's an option there to generate a constructor. So you can generate a constructor and select the fields that you want to pass as parameters, or you can just generate an empty constructor if you like. So if we hit generate constructor, this allows you to specify which fields you want to pass values for. So if we choose team name there and click OK, so our constructor is going to pass a parameter into team name. So it did that automatically that time. So at this point I like to test my class and see if I can create an object from it. So let's try that. So it's a new team object. I'm going to call it T1, or let's call it T1 maybe. Equals new team. I'm going to pass the team name, Sligo Rovers. No errors generated there, so I think that looks okay. Our constructor looks like it's happy enough. So let's try and print out something from that new object. So if I write team1 dot, and let's write out the team name. Just add, oops. Just add a read line to hold the display after that. And let's run this. Okay, it looks good. So we create a new object called Sligo Rovers, and we printed the object showing the team name. So I think we're on track. So that means we should be able to create the other objects. Okay, and I see the syntax that is required here is a little bit different to the one I use. So this should actually be the team name in abbreviated form, and the rest look okay. So I'll take out this test line here, and there's our new objects. Okay, so we've created our objects. Part 4, we're going to create an array of type team to hold all the team objects and add those team objects to the array. So let's create our array first. So normally when we create an array, a string array or an int array, we give it the data type first. In this case, it's not a string, it's not an int. The data type is team. So this new array is going to be of type team. So team, let's give it a name, maybe team array equals new team. And how many elements do we want in the array? I think we have 5 there. So that's our new array created. Now let's add those objects that we've previously created to our new array. So the first position in team array is position 0, and that's going to be equal to the object name Sligo Rovers. That's the first one, and we can do the others in the same way. So position 1 will be Finn Harps. We could add these in one line as an alternative. Let me comment these out for a second. We could specify the contents of the array in the array creation statement. So in here goes Sligo Rovers, Finn Harps, Galway United, Derry City, and Dundalk. Okay, so that looks happy. It wasn't happy until we provided 5 elements, but now it looks like we're good. So we've created a new array, and we've added the 5 objects to that array, either in one line or in multiple lines. Okay, so now we want to print out this list of objects. And one thing that would make this easier, it's not required in Lab 5, but we have seen it before and it came up in the exam. When we want to print the contents of an object, an easy way to do that, rather than specifying all the fields individually, an easy way is to override the toString for that class. So if we go down to our class player and go down below our public accessors there, if we override the toString, so public override you can see there we're getting some default text, but we're going to change that a little bit. We're going to say return a string format that looks something like this. So we're going to specify the team name, and we'll give that some space to display, maybe 20 characters or so. Then we will want to display the wins for that team. And there's going to be the second tab in our display. Then our losses. That's going to be the third column, position 2. Draws. Sorry, that's position 3. 0, 1, 2, 3. That should be -20. Games. This is position 4. and points. And this is position 5. Okay, close that string. And the fields that we are going to pass into those columns, team name, wins, passes, draws, games, and points. So we can format that any way we like. There's a comma there. We could use just field names and pluses and quotes, but this string format syntax is nice because it's going to give us nice even columns. So with that toString override in the class, now when we print the object, let's try this. So let's just try and print one of our objects here. Let's just try and print Sligo Rovers. Let's run that. Okay, so we can see our display there showing the team, the wins, losses, draws, games, and points. Most of those values are 0. They're all 0 actually at the moment. But we can see when that data comes in, that should look okay. We might narrow the columns a little bit, but that's just aesthetics there. So you can see by overriding that toString every time we print the object, it's going to take the format that we specify in the overridden toString. So it's worth doing. Saves us having to create a method to print the contents of these objects. Just override the toString, and then whenever that object is printed, it's going to print in that format. Now with that toString in place, we don't want to just print one team. What we want to do is loop through the arrays. So the for each loop is ideal for this. We could just use normal loop, but for each makes it nice and easy. So let's get that underway. So for each team, let's use the variable I to loop through, and the collection we're looping through is team array. And what do we want to do? We want to write the object. So each time I iterates, we want to print the contents of I. Let's have a look and see what that looks like. Okay, so there's all our teams printing out. Again, yeah, we could improve the layout by just narrowing those columns, but you can see all our teams are printing out. So next we're asked to create an enum called result in the team class that has 3 elements: win, lose, or draw. So an enum is a very simple way of setting up a list that we can then refer to, and it's defined at class level. So to define our enum, it's going to be a public enum, so all their methods outside the class can get at it. So it's a public enum. We're going to call this one result, and in curly braces we just define the elements of the enum. So win, lose, and draw are the elements of this particular enum. So that's our enum defined. Now we need to create a method called add result in the team class, and it takes in one parameter of type result, and that will update the read-only properties. So let's have a look at this one. So next we're gonna create the add result method. This is part 7. Takes in one parameter of type result. Remember, result is the enum that we defined in part 6. And from there, depending on the result, win, lose, or draw, we're going to update the read-only properties. So let's make a start on this. So it's a new method, public. It's not going to return anything, so it's a void return value. It's going to be called add result, and it's going to take in a value of type result. So we've defined result here as an enum, and that's the type that's going to be passed in here as a result. So we could call this maybe new result. But important to note there that what's being passed in is an enum. Now, how are we going to evaluate these wins, losses and draws and give the appropriate number of points? We could use if statements, but the switch statement is a nice one to use here. So if we type switch, and what are we going to evaluate in the switch? We're going to take in new result here. So let's provide that. Switch new result. Now, IntelliSense will actually populate the switch case for us, if you like. So you can see there it's giving you different options, but if you add the missing cases there, look, it's going to add a case for result win, result lose, and so on. So let's go with that. So our switch statement is going to take in result as an enum from result that we've defined up here, and then we can evaluate each enum value. So if result is win, if result is lose, and so on. So if result is win, what do we want to do? I guess we want to update a couple of different properties. We want to update the wins property. So if we increment that, it's telling me that wins there is read only. Yeah, that public property, if you remember, was read only. So we've got to call the private property there. The number of games played will also need to be updated. So we'll update the number of games, and the points will need to be updated as well. So points will be +3, won't it? Plus equals 3 even. And I think that should do it. If we get a lose, then no points will be updated, but games played will need to be incremented. I think that's it. Just games played. Oh, we want to increment losses as well, don't we? So losses ++. And if the team draws, what values do we want updated? So draws will need to be updated, and games played will need to be updated, and points won't need to be updated. So, oh sorry, points will need to be updated. If you get a draw, that'll be 1 point, won't it? So points plus equals 1. Okay, I think that's it. So we have an add result method now. And if we go back to our instructions, let's see what happens if we add these calls to the add result method in our main up above. Let's go back up here. So after we've printed out the table of points, we're going to record some results. So Sligo Rovers, we're going to add result, and we're using the enum here, team.result, which is the enum.win. No errors generated there, so that looks good. What we might do as well is print out our table now that some results have been updated. So I'm just going to copy and paste the code for the moment. I think this would work better in a new method, but for now, just to test this, I'm going to run it as it is. So let's see what we get. Okay, that looks like it's working. Okay, so part 9, we've got to loop through the details of the team objects again with these updated results. So I'm going to propose that we do a little bit of refactoring here. You can see I've repeated some code to produce those printouts in our first run at this, but whenever you see repeated code, that's always an opportunity for refactoring. So what I'd like to do is create a new method that produces that printout. So if we go a new void method, let's call it print results. And basically I'm just going to copy that code that we developed earlier on to print out our table of results. Or I'm going to cut it actually. And I'm going to paste it in here. And instead of typing that lot of code, now I'm going to just call the print results method that I've just created. And I'm going to do the same thing with the code a little bit further up. So here, instead of calling this code, I'm going to call that method. And let's run that, see what it looks like. Yeah, that's better, isn't it? So now whenever we want to run that printout, we just call the print results method. Okay, part 10. Implement the iComparable interface to allow team objects to be compared based on points. So let's have a look at this one. First thing we need to do is find the team class and have it implement from iComparable. Okay, now when we do that, when we inherit from an interface, it's unlikely that we're meeting all the requirements of the interface, so we're generating an error there straight away. And you can see there IntelliSense is offering us different options to implement a compare to method. And if we scroll down now, IntelliSense should have added a new method. We need to add a little bit to it though. We need to tell it which object it should pass in. So in our case, we're passing in team, and we're using the that keyword to just pick the initial value that's being passed in. And so team that equals team of object that's being passed in. And then we want to return that dot points, and we want to compare it to this dot points. Now if we go back to our main method, we should be able to sort our array by points. So array.sort, what's the name of our array? Team array. And let's print that to see, does it sort by points? So we call our print results method again. Okay, let's run that. And yeah, that looks good. Look, we have another printed table, and this one is sorted by points. Great. Okay, so part 12, add a new auto-implemented property called manager name. Create a new constructor that takes a team name and a manager name. Link the constructors using the this keyword. If the team object is created with only a team name, the manager's name is added as a another. So these are linked constructors. So let's start by implementing that new property. So a new property, manager name. getter and setter for manager name. Let's see if that's appeared. Yeah, there it is. Now we need a new constructor to account for or to take in a manager name when an object is being created. So there's our existing constructor. Okay, so what I'm going to do is change the existing constructor to allow a manager name to be specified. X. Try that again. And that's a string. And again, we're going to pass that into manager name is equal to the parameter manager name. Okay, so that's our constructor, which will work fine when a team name and a manager name are passed in. But we also want to account for the possibility that only a team name will be passed. So we need another constructor to deal with that situation. So we're going to create another constructor with the same name. It's only going to have one parameter. So that's string team name. And before, well, let's put in the body of the constructor. But before the body of the constructor, we're going to use the this keyword to link this constructor to the other constructor further down. And what it's going to do is, if one parameter is passed in, team name, it's going to pass that team name parameter and a default value for our new manager name of a in other. That can be anything you want there in that string. So if an object is created and only team name is passed in, then this constructor will pass that team name and a default manager name into our main constructor. And obviously if a team is created with a team name and a manager, then it'll go directly to this constructor. So let's see, have we met all the requirements there? I think we have. We should test it though. Let's see if we can go back up to our main. First good sign here is that all of the existing teams we've already created, we haven't generated any errors by changing the constructor there. But what happens if we also try and pass a manager name? Does that work? Let's see. Okay, we'll cause some controversy here and mix soccer and GAA. And now we should also update our toString with this new field. So let's see if we can do that. Here's our toString, so we'll add another column to this. And the new field at the end here is manager name. And let's just run that, see what happens. Okay, so we can see there that worked well, because when we provided a manager name, then that was passed in for the new object. But where we didn't provide a manager name, that manager name was defaulting there to a another. So that looks good.